The massive crystal spires of Centauri Prime gleamed against the purple sky as transport ships from across the galaxy descended toward the most elite educational institution in known space. The Galactic Youth Academy had educated the children of ambassadors, military leaders, and planetary governors for over 3 centuries. Today marked a historic first. Jake Thompson pressed his face against the viewport of the human transport vessel, watching the alien architecture grow larger. Back on Earth, he had been just another high school junior from Ohio who happened to score well on some weird aptitude tests. Now he was about to become the first human ever to attend an alien school. Inside the Academy's administrative tower, Dean Morthok's 4 eyes darted nervously between holographic displays, showing Jake's biological data. The tall blue-skinned Altarian had overseen thousands of student enrollments, but nothing had prepared him for this. Human medical files read like science fiction horror stories to most galactic species. "Look at these bone density readings," whispered Dr. Yelanara, the Academy's head physician. Her tentacled arms trembled as she scrolled through the data. "Their skeletal structure can withstand impacts that would pulverize our students into dust." Professor Kethfer, a reptilian saurian who taught xenobiology, shook his scaled head in disbelief. "And their cardiovascular system, it's designed for a planet where the atmospheric pressure alone would crush most of our species. They call Earth a Deathworld for good reason." The faculty had spent weeks preparing emergency medical protocols specifically for their human student. Special atmospheric processors had been installed throughout the school to provide Earth-normal air pressure in case Jake experienced distress. Medical teams practiced procedures for treating a species known throughout the galaxy for their terrifying ability to survive catastrophic injuries. Meanwhile, in the student dormitories, rumors spread like wildfire among the young aliens. A group of Centaurian students, their silver skin shimmering with excitement, huddled around a holographic display showing grainy footage from Earth. "Is it true they can survive being struck by lightning?" asked Veltar, his voice barely above a whisper. "My father says human soldiers once held off an entire Krellian battle fleet with nothing but primitive projectile weapons," added another student, her large eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. The stories had grown increasingly wild over the generations. Humans were said to be the only species that actually became stronger when injured. They allegedly required no sleep for days at a time and could survive in environments that would instantly kill other life forms. Some claimed they could run for hours without stopping, while others whispered that humans could eat almost anything organic and extract nutrition from it. When Jake's transport finally docked, a small crowd of faculty members waited nervously in the arrival bay. They had expected some kind of towering warrior, perhaps scarred from battles on his dangerous homeworld. Instead, a perfectly ordinary-looking young male walked down the ramp, carrying a simple duffel bag and wearing what appeared to be casual clothing. Jake smiled and waved at the assembled aliens, completely unaware of their terror. To him, they looked like the coolest collection of beings he had ever seen. Real aliens, just like in the movies, except they were staring at him like he might explode at any moment. "Hi everyone," Jake said cheerfully. "I'm really excited to be here. This place looks amazing." Dean Mortek stepped forward cautiously, as if approaching a sleeping predator. "Welcome to Centauri Prime, Jake Thompson. We have prepared special accommodations for your unique physiological requirements." Jake looked confused. "Oh, thanks, but I'm pretty easy to please. Just point me toward the cafeteria and my room, and I'll be fine." The administrative coordinator, a nervous insectoid creature named Clicked, suddenly realized something that made his compound eyes dilate with horror. He pulled up Jake's class schedule on his datapad, his mandibles clicking frantically. "Dean Morthok," he stammered, "the human's first class tomorrow morning is advanced physical education with Professor Vextal." A collective gasp echoed through the arrival bay. Professor Vextol was legendary for his brutal training regimens that pushed even the hardiest alien students to their breaking point. The massive gymnasium stretched across 3 levels, its walls lined with equipment that looked more like medieval torture devices than exercise gear. Jake walked in wearing his simple Earth gym clothes, a t-shirt, shorts, and sneakers that seemed almost primitive compared to the high-tech suits and breathing apparatus worn by his alien classmates. Professor Vextol stood at the center of the room like a mountain of muscle and fury. The 8-foot-tall warrior belonged to a species that had evolved on a high-gravity world, making him naturally stronger than most other aliens. His reputation for breaking students was legendary across the academy. Even the toughest military cadets feared his classes. "Today we begin with basic conditioning," Vextol announced, his voice echoing through the gymnasium. "We will start slowly to accommodate our new guest." The other students exchanged worried glances. When Professor Vextol said he would start slowly, it usually meant someone would end up in the medical bay within the first hour. They had all heard the whispers about the human student, but seeing Jake, standing there looking completely relaxed, made some of them wonder if the stories were just myths. The first exercise involved anti-gravity resistance bands that created artificial weight by manipulating gravitational fields. Each student was assigned a resistance level based on their species' physical capabilities. The Altarians, with their tall, slender builds, struggled with even the lowest settings. The stockier Corvin students managed slightly higher levels, but still groaned under the strain. Jake examined his resistance band curiously. The device was calibrated for human physiology based on the Academy's best guesses about Earth gravity and human muscle density. What they didn't realize was that their estimates were incredibly conservative. "This is interesting technology," Jake said to a nearby Zentarian student who was already sweating profusely. "How does it work, exactly?" The silver-skinned alien could barely speak between gasps. "It creates artificial mass using gravity manipulation. This is maximum safe level for most species." Jake activated his device and immediately frowned. He barely felt any resistance at all. Meanwhile, around him, students were straining and grunting as they performed simple arm movements. A few of the smaller species had already sat down to rest, their breathing apparatus working overtime to supply them with oxygen. Professor Vextol called out politely, "I think my device might be malfunctioning. It doesn't seem to be working." The professor stomped over, his heavy footsteps making the floor vibrate. He examined Jake's resistance band, checked the readings, and his expression grew confused. The device showed it was operating at full capacity. "Impossible," Vextol muttered. He recalibrated the device, pushing it beyond normal parameters. "Try this." Jake activated the modified device and nodded approvingly. "Oh, there we go. Now I can feel something." He began performing the exercises with smooth, effortless movements, while chatting casually with struggling students nearby. "So where are you all from? This school seems really cool." A Corvin student named Grixpol stared in disbelief as Jake continued his workout without showing any signs of fatigue. Grixpol's own device was set to barely 10% of Jake's level, and he was already exhausted. "Human," Grixpol gasped. "Are you not experiencing difficulty?" Jake paused his exercise routine and looked around at his classmates with genuine concern. Most of them were sitting or lying down, their various breathing apparatus working frantically. Several had removed pieces of their environmental suits due to overheating. "Are you guys okay? You all look pretty tired. Maybe we should take a break." Professor Vextol's 3 hearts began beating faster. In 30 years of teaching, he had never seen a student treat his introductory exercises as if they were gentle stretches. He decided to escalate immediately to the intermediate level training. "Class, we will now move to atmospheric pressure adaptation," he announced. "This exercise simulates the conditions found on various hostile worlds." The students groaned collectively. This was usually a midterm exercise, not something attempted in the first week. Special chambers descended from the ceiling, each one designed to create different atmospheric conditions. Some simulated the crushing pressure of deep ocean worlds. Others, the thin air of high-altitude planets. Jake stepped into his assigned chamber with the same casual attitude he had shown toward everything else. The machine began creating an atmospheric pressure equivalent to being 3 miles underwater on Earth. For most species, this level of pressure was at the absolute limit of survivability. Through the transparent walls of his chamber, Jake waved at his struggling classmates and mouthed the words, "This is fun," while the other students watched in growing horror as their human classmate treated their maximum survival challenge as entertainment. Professor Vextel's pride as an instructor was crumbling before his eyes. In desperation, he made a decision that would become legendary in Academy history. He activated the Crucible, a massive obstacle course that stretched across 5 levels of the gymnasium and was typically reserved for final examinations of senior military students. The course materialized from the floor and walls like something from a nightmare. Spinning barriers emerged from hidden panels. Chambers filled with colored gases descended from the ceiling, and sections of the floor began heating up to glow red-hot. Warning sirens blared as the Academy's most dangerous training simulation came online. "Attention students," Professor Vextel announced, his voice carrying a tone of grim satisfaction. "We will now attempt the Endurance Crucible. This is typically a final-year challenge, but I believe our human exchange student requires more appropriate testing." The other students looked at each other in terror. Even the toughest seniors rarely completed the Crucible without injury. Half of them had never even seen it activated before. The course was designed to test every aspect of alien physiology to its absolute safe limits over a period of 6 hours. Jake looked up at the towering obstacle course with genuine excitement. "Wow, this looks awesome. It's like those Ninja Warrior shows back home, but way cooler." The first challenge was a maze filled with Corvin combat gas, a substance that caused severe respiratory distress in most species, but wasn't actually lethal. Students were expected to navigate through while wearing breathing apparatus and protective gear. The maze was designed to take 45 minutes to complete for a fit alien student. Jake jogged into the green-tinted gas cloud, wearing nothing but his regular gym clothes. The other students watched through the observation windows as he disappeared into the toxic haze. Within 10 minutes, he emerged on the other side, completely unaffected. "That was interesting," he called back to his classmates. "It smelled kind of like cleaning supplies from home. Is that supposed to happen?" Dr. Yelanara, who was monitoring from the medical station, checked her instruments frantically. "The gas concentration is at normal levels. How is he not affected?" Meanwhile, the first volunteer to follow Jake into the maze lasted barely 2 minutes before stumbling out, gasping and requiring immediate medical attention. Despite full protective gear, the second challenge involved extreme temperature variations. Students had to cross a series of platforms that alternated between freezing cold and scorching heat. The platforms were designed to simulate the surface of tidally locked planets where temperatures could vary by hundreds of degrees. Within a few steps, Jake hopped across the platforms like he was playing hopscotch, pausing occasionally to help students who had collapsed from thermal shock. A Zentarian student named Lixura had made it halfway across before the temperature extremes overwhelmed her cooling systems. "Hey, are you okay?" Jake asked, easily lifting the silver-skinned alien and carrying her back to the safe zone. "Maybe you should sit this one out. This seems pretty dangerous for you guys." Lixura stared at him in amazement. The platforms he had just walked across were still glowing from heat that should have melted his shoes. "Human Jake, are your feet not burning?" Jake looked down at his sneakers, which were indeed smoking slightly. "Oh, these old things. They've been through worse. I wore them hiking in Death Valley last summer." By the 3rd hour, The medical bay was overflowing with exhausted alien students. Some had heat stroke, others had altitude sickness from the thinner chambers, and several were being treated for minor injuries from the impact tests. The Academy's entire medical staff was working overtime. Jake, meanwhile, had completed every challenge thrown at him and was now sitting in the observation area, chatting with Professor Vextel about the engineering behind the obstacle course. He showed no signs of fatigue whatsoever, and had actually been asking if there were more difficult versions available. "This is really well designed," Jake said enthusiastically. "The gravity variations remind me of rock climbing back home, and those spinning barriers are like a really intense version of dodgeball. Do you have anything that goes longer than 6 hours?" I was just starting to feel warmed up. Professor Vextel's hands were shaking as he realized that his most extreme training regimen had served as nothing more than a light warm-up for this terrifyingly cheerful human teenager. News of Jake's impossible performance spread through the Academy faster than a plasma fire. Students abandoned their regular classes to crowd around viewing screens, showing footage from the gymnasium. Social media feeds across the galaxy buzzed with shaky videos taken by alien students, each post garnering millions of views and comments, ranging from disbelief to outright terror. Dean Morthok found himself fielding emergency calls from parents across 12 star systems. Concerned alien families demanded explanations for why their children were sharing classes with what they now believed was essentially a walking weapon of mass destruction disguised as a friendly teenager. In the faculty lounge, professors from every department gathered around holographic displays showing Jake's biometric data. The numbers seemed impossible, even accounting for measurement errors. "Look at his heart rate," whispered Professor Kethver, pointing at the readouts with a trembling claw. During the entire 6-hour crucible, it never exceeded what we would consider a resting rate for most species. Dr. Yelanara pulled up comparative analysis charts that made the situation even more frightening. "His muscle efficiency ratings are off our scales. We literally don't have equipment sensitive enough to measure his maximum capabilities." The situation reached a breaking point when Admiral Zorkstel, the Academy's military advisor and a decorated war hero, arrived to observe Jake personally. The scarred veteran of dozens of interplanetary conflicts had never met a human before, and the story seemed too incredible to believe. Professor Vextel, now completely obsessed with finding Jake's limits, had requisitioned equipment from the Academy's military training facility. These weren't educational tools. They were machines designed to prepare alien soldiers for the harshest combat environments in known space. Jake walked into the gymnasium to find it transformed into something resembling a military testing facility. Massive machines hummed with dangerous energy, and warning signs in 17 languages covered every surface. "Oh wow, new equipment," Jake said with genuine excitement. "This looks even cooler than yesterday's stuff," Admiral Zorkstel observed from behind reinforced barriers, as Professor Vextel activated the first test. A kinetic impact simulator designed to measure how much force a soldier could absorb before sustaining serious injury. The machine was calibrated for the toughest species in the galaxy. "This device simulates the impact of various battlefield hazards," Professor Vextel explained nervously. "We'll start at the minimum safe level." The machine struck Jake with the force equivalent to being hit by a speeding hovercar. He stumbled back a step, rubbed his shoulder, and smiled. That was interesting. It felt like getting tackled in football, but with more precise timing. "How does the force distribution work?" Admiral Zorkstel's 3 eyes widened in disbelief. He had personally tested that same machine years ago and spent 2 weeks in the medical bay recovering from the minimum setting. The tests continued for hours. Jake cheerfully endured atmospheric conditions that would boil the blood of most species. Commenting on how the pressure changes reminded him of deep-sea diving trips with his family. He walked through radiation levels that required the alien observers to retreat to shielded bunkers, asking thoughtful questions about the particle physics involved. When they tested his reaction time using combat simulators that fired harmless but fast-moving projectiles, Jake began catching them out of the air with his bare hands, asking if this was some kind of game. On Earth, we have something similar called laser tag, he explained to the horrified military personnel. This is way more realistic though. The projectiles actually have weight to them. The final test nearly caused a diplomatic incident. The atmospheric survival chamber was designed to simulate the surface of the most hostile worlds, where elite soldiers might need to operate. The combination of toxic gases, extreme temperatures, and crushing pressure had never been survived by any alien species for more than a few minutes. Even with full environmental suits, Jake entered the chamber, wearing his regular gym clothes and carrying a water bottle, through the reinforced viewing window. The assembled faculty and military observers watched him sit down cross-legged and begin what appeared to be meditation exercises. "Is he sleeping in there?" asked Professor Kethver, his voice barely a whisper. 20 minutes later, Jake knocked on the chamber door from the inside. When they opened it, he stepped out completely unaffected and asked, "Is there a bathroom nearby? Also, do you guys have any snacks? All this testing is making me a little hungry." The emergency faculty meeting stretched into its 8th hour as administrators, professors, and military advisors struggled to comprehend the magnitude of their problem. The Galactic Youth Academy, an institution that had successfully educated alien royalty and future military leaders for centuries, was facing its first existential crisis. Dean Morthock stood before a holographic display showing Jake's test results alongside the Academy's current safety standards. Every single measurement was so far beyond their scales that their equipment couldn't provide accurate readings. "We need to face the facts," the dean announced to the exhausted faculty. "Our entire educational system is designed for species that evolved on what humans would consider paradise worlds. We have no framework for teaching a student from an actual death world." The situation became even more complicated when Jake himself appeared at the meeting room door, looking slightly confused. He had been wandering the halls, trying to find someone to talk to about his class schedule. "Hey, sorry to interrupt," Jake said politely. "I was wondering if I could maybe get some more challenging classes. The physical education stuff is fun, but I'm worried I might get out of shape for wrestling season back home." Professor Vexto, who had been staring blankly at the wall for the past hour, suddenly made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "Wrestling season," he repeated weakly. "You consider our maximum military-grade training insufficient preparation for a high school sport?" Jake scratched his head sheepishly. "Well, wrestling can get pretty intense. Last season, I had to cut 15 pounds in 2 weeks, and our coach made us run stadium stairs carrying our teammates. Coach Williams always said that, if you're not throwing up by the end of practice, you didn't work hard enough." The room fell silent, except for the sound of Professor Vextal quietly crying into his hands. Admiral Zorkstel leaned forward with morbid curiosity. "Jake, what exactly constitutes normal physical training on your world?" Jake's face lit up as he began describing his typical workout routine. "Oh, you know, pretty standard stuff. We'd start with a 5-mile run, then do some weightlifting. Our school gym had these things called barbells, where you stack metal plates on a bar and lift them. I could bench press about twice my body weight, but that was nothing special. Tommy Richardson could lift almost 3 times his weight. Dr. Yelenara quickly calculated the conversion to galactic standard measurements and nearly fainted. Jake was casually describing strength levels that would make him competitive with industrial machinery. "Then we'd do wrestling practice," Jake continued. "Lots of grappling, learning how to fall properly so you don't get hurt, building up pain tolerance. Coach always said pain was just weakness leaving the body." The alien educators exchanged horrified looks. Their most advanced students required medical supervision to attempt physical challenges that this human teenager considered basic conditioning for children. Over the following weeks, The Academy underwent the most dramatic restructuring in its history. Emergency engineering crews worked around the clock to construct new training facilities capable of providing actual challenges for human physiology. The existing equipment was reclassified as remedial or recovery therapy. Jake became an overnight celebrity across the galaxy. Videos of him casually completing impossible challenges went viral on every social media platform. Alien students lined up for hours just to watch him eat in the cafeteria, amazed by his ability to consume foods that would be toxic to most species. The most popular video showed Jake helping a group of struggling Zentarian students with their basic fitness requirements. He had improvised a training routine that involved him carrying 3 alien students on his back, while doing exercises that the students couldn't complete even without any additional weight. "See, the key is breathing," Jake explained cheerfully, while doing push-ups with 400 pounds of alien students clinging to his back. "And don't forget to stay hydrated." On Earth, we'd do this kind of stuff during summer camp when I was like 12. The Academy eventually established a completely separate curriculum track for human students, though Jake remained the only one enrolled. They brought in human military trainers via interstellar video conferences, who looked at the alien facilities and declared them suitable for elementary school physical education classes. Professor Vextel took early retirement and moved to a meditation colony where he spent his days trying to forget that somewhere in the galaxy, human children were being trained by beings who considered his life's work to be a light warm-up. Meanwhile, Jake continued attending classes, completely oblivious to the chaos he had caused, making friends with alien students who were simultaneously terrified and fascinated by their friendly neighborhood Deathworld monster.